This is episode 5 of Away, a podcast for anyone interested in a secular approach to 12-step recovery. Hi, everybody. It is 1:12 in the morning. I've been up since 5:15 this morning. I went on a cleaning jag tonight, and it was sort of obsessive, like I couldn't stop until it was completely done. My husband has fallen sound asleep in the meantime, and I'm not going to interrupt him, so I've gone into the guest bedroom, and I have a cat at my head, my one-eyed cat, Jack, and my other one-eyed cat, my shoulder, and Sophie, and Uma. All but 2 are on the bed. On chapter 2, there is a solution. And I'm going to use the same format I've been using. I guess it's in some ways similar to a big book study. I'm going to read and then discuss a little bit. Chapter 2, there is a solution. Just the title, right? There's a solution? Hot damn. I'm in the right place. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. But there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from a shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Yes, florid, I know. But what's important here is we and a fellowship. I can get on board with that. I can get on board with friendliness. In the beginning, I might not have been ready for super friendliness or anything indescribably wonderful because I didn't understand even what that meant. But the idea of rescue and of help from others was appealing because I was hopeless. Skipping down the page on 17. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree, and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. So, to be clear, this does not say we have only one way. And it does not say we have a perfect way. The writers of this had a way that mostly worked for most of them. On to page 18, all the way down to the part in italics. But the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. So, that paragraph's in italics for a reason, right? This is really the basis for the whole program. One alcoholic talking to another. I've said it probably a dozen times already in previous episodes, and I'll probably say it more than a dozen times going forward. I think it is incumbent upon me to repeat it because I think it is important that you hear it if you're a struggling agnostic or atheist, to remember that in the end, that's what this program is about, divine intervention or not. If people believe that, that's okay. They're entitled to believe that. I wish some of them wouldn't shove it down our throats or look down on us for not seeing a supernatural element to it. Nonetheless, in the end, it's one alcoholic talking to another. Every shrink, every doctor, every friend who tried to talk to me about my drinking, my other problems and addictions, was met with deaf ears. And in big part, it's because while they had sympathy or maybe pity or were worried or anxious, they didn't fully understand. They didn't have empathy. When someone with the same problem or problems as me talked to me, I actually heard her. I believed her because she knew, in a way, that no outside person did. She had empathy. She got it. And that really does make all the difference. And the book keeps saying that over and over again. So if you pull out the God, it really is simple. When we talk to someone who's made the same mistakes, who has the same anxiety, who has the same fear, who has to make the same changes, has been through what we've been through, no matter the situation, it is much easier to be vulnerable and open. So I'm going to skip ahead to the middle of page 20 and just read one line. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? And it goes on to say it's the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. And it is. This is a book detailing the things that this group of people, this first 100 people, did in order to get, and most of them, stay sober. A book of suggestions. Here are the things we did. And that's what you do with anyone who asks for your help. If you don't know the answers, you may just listen. If you've been through the same thing, there's a good chance you'll contribute to the conversation and say, I had that same problem, and here's how I solved it. On to page 21. But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. So there, the first drink gets you drunk. If I don't take the first one, I can't get drunk. But if I do take the first one, I will inevitably get drunk. So, here is the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature, but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world. You let him drink for a day, and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. There's a place where I really identify. That's me. But not just the drunk asshole part. The part where I appear, quote-unquote, normal in nature. I'm one of the finest people in the world. No, really. But when I drink, I'm a lot less fine. My fine doesn't necessarily look like yours, right? I was never ever mean. It's not in my nature to say cutting things or to hurt people intentionally. My Mr. Hyde was a liar. He lied to people he loved most in order to protect them. from him, from myself. I was wild and fun and funny and a liar. I let people down constantly. I was quite the opposite of antisocial, because without booze, I was antisocial. I was the life of the party, the 72-hour party usually, but I did too much for others. I tried to buy their love and acceptance. And also that last sentence, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. I really relate to that, because a lot of the things about which I am most ashamed are when I let a friend down. I had an important thing to do the next day, to show up for someone, and I couldn't because of a hangover. But why? Why did we do it right before we knew we had something important? I don't know why other people do it. For me, I think, looking back, I think I had a great deal of anxiety doing new things, meeting new people. Just going out into public sometimes was very anxiety-inducing. So I think I drank to quell that in some part, or to give myself a reason not to join in or be a part of. Okay, I'm skipping ahead to page 24. Of course, the paragraph in italics. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. This is, in its essence, step one. All I need to do to stop the cycle is not take the first drink. And that should be easy, considering my life is unbearable. Hated myself so much that I had no mirrors in the house anymore. So life had clearly become unbearable. So the first goal, and the only thing I really needed to do in the beginning, was not take the first drink. On page 25, there is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. I mean, I would say that's a little much. I haven't been rocketed into a fourth dimension, but I am still every day grateful just not to have a hangover. And that makes every day a little bit better, even my really grumpy, terrible days, even a really bad day at work where I've felt humiliated or angry. It's also much easier without a hangover. It's also much easier without shame. But this paragraph is also really bringing us into steps 1 through 5. Self-searching, leveling of pride, confession of shortcomings. So here's how I see it. Step 1, I'm powerless over alcohol when I take a drink. When I take a drink, I don't know what's going to happen next, and my life inevitably gets worse, not better. 2, I walked into a room where a lot of people say they once felt the same way I did, and now they claim to feel better. Are they lying, or am I willing to believe them? 3, all right, fine. Maybe I'm being naive, but I am going to believe them for now. Maybe even take their suggestions and see if they're liars, see if it works. What's the harm? 4, they just want me to think about instances in which I felt wronged, and maybe I was wronged, maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was a victim, maybe I wasn't. But how will I know without writing it down and talking about it? 5, okay, well, writing that list was awful. Here you go, here's my list sponsor. Can you help me some more now, please? I need help. On 26. A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished the treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental conditions were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he returned to this doctor whom he admired and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. This is the part of the AA story when you'll hear people start to use the word synchronicity, because this is the story of Roland Hazard, who is searching for a psychiatrist, and Freud says, I'm not taking new patients, and Adler says, I don't take your insurance, and Jung says, yeah, come on in. I take insurance and I'm seeing new patients. So Roland Hazard goes to see Jung. And there is some debate about this story, about the timing and some of the facts that you hear in the rooms or in some of the literature. But right now, that's not what's relevant. There's so much history in the next few pages that I actually can't go into it at length right now, but I will do a bonus episode about it. But Roland is seeking help for his alcoholism, and he tries all sorts of different ways. To make a long story very short, Jung tells Roland there's no answer but a vital spiritual experience. So Roland's like, that's great. Where do I start? It took me a while to understand that spiritual didn't have to mean otherworldly. Spiritual and celestial are synonyms, but they don't have the same definitions. Spiritual also means of or relating to the mind or intellect, closely akin to interests, attitude, and outlook. So, I have to change my attitude. I've heard that before. But that's kind of it. I gotta change the way I treat myself and the way I treat others. I have to change the way I think about myself and the world around me. Second paragraph on page 27. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where the state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you." Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, those occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the same nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of their lives, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description." Working under the assumption that these were, in fact, Jung's exact words to Roland, nowhere does it say that a vital spiritual experience is the same as finding God. And phenomena does not mean inexplicable. It means remarkable or exceptional, but also observable. It goes on to say that being a churchgoer is not the same as being spiritual. And I would argue that's true no matter what. Unless you practice the principles of your religion in all your affairs, unless you commune with God in the ways your religion prescribes, then what does it really mean? In my personal experience, there was a huge emotional displacement and rearrangement. Not in order to get sober, but as I stayed sober. And the reason for those very real and necessary changes were me. I wanted them, and I worked hard for them. I did the work. I paid attention to the things, the defects, that were keeping me from being my best self. And I made a conscious effort to change them. And I managed to do all that while not believing in anything supernatural. The end of page 28. We think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair, which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or a present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us are in favor of such memberships. So again, The context of time matters, maybe truer than for many of them, and what they knew. But it is an entirely personal affair. And when people insist that you believe in a God, even if it's a God of your understanding, they're insisting on theism. The higher power appears to have to be a singular God to many people, and certainly talk of it in the rooms makes it sound that way. I would take a God of your understanding with a lowercase g, if you have to say it that way. Your understanding could be science, could be physics and the universe. There isn't only one way. Oh, well, never mind. We'll finish up this chapter since it's the last page. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we have recovered. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing. So this is it. Honest, open, willing. Honest, open, willing. These instructions are suggestions. They are laid out as instructions because the working assumption is that you are reading this book because you have a desire to stop drinking, and that you'd like to try something that worked for others. I hope this makes you feel supported and that you're not alone and that together we can find a way.